Dear Kevin Debruyn, maybe the greatest midfielder of the modern era, to some the greatest player to ever grace the Premier League, a footballing fairy tale, defined by titles, success and glory. But in reality, his story started as a nightmare, filled with betrayal, heartbreak and tragedy. Because Kevin Debruyn was the shy and quiet kid, and because of this he was often misunderstood. But beneath that shy quietness lied a hunger and desire to become great. At 14 years old, he left his home to join Genk's academy, where he would live with a foster family. He trained hard and excelled on the pitch, but after a year, he got the phone call that would change his entire life.
I come home and my parents were like sad, crying, and I'm like, what's wrong? The foster parents don't want you to come back anymore. I'm like, why? Because of who you are. I'm like, what? Yeah, you're difficult to handle, you're very quiet. They just find you difficult. As a 16-year-old, 15-year-old, you're like, yeah, it's not nice to hear, because a lot of time in the beginning of my career, I've been given the word like I'm a difficult person, but in the end, I'm just a quiet person, shy person. And that's been given to me as difficult, so at the end you're like...
This moment could have crushed him, but instead it ignited a fire. And Kevin made a promise to his mother, saying, "I'll be in the first team soon. Then everything will change." 1 month later, he was in Genk's first team. The foster family would then come back, but by that time Kevin had moved on. Still, he would later go on to call this period the loneliest time of his life, because all he had was football. And by 19, he was his nation's brightest star, leading Genk to the Belgian title. The world took notice, and in 2012, Chelsea came calling. The dream of performing on the biggest stage was about to come true, until reality came through. Because the Champions League winning Chelsea side barely gave him a chance. He was left on the bench and then loaned out to Werder Bremen. And the tabloids of Debruyn not being good enough for the Premier League started spreading. In many ways, it reminded him of his childhood, being cast out and fighting for acceptance. But his battles weren't only on the pitch, because outside of it, he was being betrayed. In early 2013, his girlfriend at the time went on a girls' trip to Madrid. There, she met Thibaut Courtois, Kevin's countryman and teammate. And when the media found out, the whole situation just became a public humiliation. Imagine being 21 years old, you're left on the bench, heartbroken, and somehow you have to keep going, with the whole world watching. Most men would have crumbled, but Kevin locked in even harder and turned his pain into fuel. In 2014, he left Chelsea and moved to Wolfsburg in Germany. He was now 23 years old, and this would be his big break. Because Kevin Debruyn was done being cast aside. This was for everyone who doubted him, from foster families who gave up on him, to the girlfriends who cheated on him, to the best friends who betrayed him, and the coaches who never believed in him. Because in Wolfsburg, Kevin Debruyn racked up goals, assists, and even records. The Bundesliga couldn't even believe it. Was this really the same kid they said wasn't good enough for the Premier League? Fly into new heights, carried by his brilliance. And in 2015, he was crowned Bundesliga Player of the Year. No longer a reject, but instead one of Europe's very elite. But just as his career truly took off, fate dealt him another heartbreak. This time, the worst kind. Because in January 2015, one of his best friends, his Wolfsburg teammate, Junior Malanda, sadly passed away in a car accident, just 20 years old. One of Belgium's brightest talents. Just hours before, Kevin had spoken to him, and now he was gone, without any warning and no goodbye. And in the midst of a career-defining season, Kevin had to keep on playing with a heavy heart, without his brother by his side. But he carried Malanda's memory with him, turning sorrow into strength once again. For every assist and every goal became a tribute to his friend in the heavens. And just weeks after the tragedy, Kevin would go on to destroy Bayern Munich 4-1. Scoring twice. And by the end of that season, he had led Wolfsburg to the second place in the Bundesliga, also winning the German Cup that year. And by now, the world knew that Kevin Debruyn was special. In the summer of 2015, Manchester City came calling, a record transfer and a new chapter. Still, the pundits only remembered him as the Chelsea reject. They called him overpriced, a possible flop. But once again, Kevin didn't respond with words. He let his football speak for itself. And in the blue side of Manchester, he transcended. The flame that had burned for years in the quiet now ignited the Premier League every single week. He threaded passes that defied vision, launched thunderbolt strikes, and engineered comebacks from sheer nothingness. The Etihad crowd fell in love with him, a genius who played like a man possessed by the purest love for the game. Season after season, De Bruyne elevated City to unprecedented heights. Premier League title after title, FA Cups, League Cups, Community Shields, and individual honours galore. He also led Belgium's golden generation to a World Cup bronze, etching his legacy onto the international stage. But one ghost remained, the one that haunted the entire Blue Moon, the Champions League. And in 2021, he would lead City to the final, where he would face his former club, Chelsea. This was the moment to finally cement himself in the history books forever, against a club that never valued him. But unfortunately, he had to leave the pitch in tears after sustaining an injury. And with one step away, Man City fell short on the biggest stage. A heartbreaking loss for De Bruyne professionally, but personally, he was grieving once again. Because just 1 year earlier, he had lost another close friend. Anel Ngongsa, the South African footballer, and Kevin's former teammate at Genk, and one of his best friends at that time, also passed away. These are the kind of struggles that the media never talked about, that Kevin had to fight in silence. And once again, he had to rise up and keep going. In 2022, Manchester City were seconds away from the Champions League final. They were leading 5-3 against Real Madrid on aggregate in the semi-final, when from out of nowhere, with seconds left of the game, Rodrigo scored 2 miraculous goals for Real Madrid, taking the game to extra time, where Real Madrid killed off the game, and went on to win the Champions League for the 14th time. And at this point, no one thought that the Champions League title would be won by either De Bruyne or Manchester City. It felt like the Champions League title was a curse that never would break. But what defines a true champion is the ability to keep turning all of those setbacks and heartbreaks into something great. And in the 2022-23 season, Manchester City would embark on one of the most dominant seasons in football history, winning the Premier League, the FA Cup, and in the Champions League semi-final, where Real Madrid waited again, they would destroy them. 4-0 at the Etihad, 5-1 in total, with De Bruyne scoring a thunderbolt in the first leg. And finally, after years of heartbreak, they climbed Europe's football Everest, winning the Champions League, completing the treble. Only the second English club in history to do so. And yes, Kevin De Bruyne was injured in the final once again, but this time it didn't matter, because he had already carried them there, pulling the strings, dictating the tempo, assisting, leading, and just being untouchable. This was his masterpiece, by the boy once cast aside, who was now the driving force behind one of the greatest teams the game has ever seen. But now, after a decade at Manchester City, the journey has come to an end. Because in recent seasons, the injuries have increased, the recoveries have taken longer, and the